So those were preschool days. And the part that I had not discussed until now is that my father was in the military, Air Force. And so we moved around quite a bit. I was born in Arizona. We were only there for less than 9 months, and then we moved to Denver, Colorado. And in Denver, if you don't know anything about Colorado right now, it's kind of one of the leaders in the entire country for death education and early intervention. And so I think I got to experience some of that while I was there. It was very well taken care of. When I entered kindergarten, I mean, there was already a support system there ready for me. I had speech pathology services. I had an audiologist that visited. And by the time I was in 1st and 2nd grade, I was in an inclusive classroom. There were maybe 5 or 6 other kids my age, all wearing hearing aids. We all had the auditory trainers or the FM systems. And so that, for me, was my first core group. And I can remember being so mad at this girl in that class who could use scissors better than me. But we know that girls tend to have better fine motor skills before boys do. So I learned that much later. So things were very well taken care of in Denver. But then we had to move again. We went to New Mexico. And that was 3rd grade. In Clovis, New Mexico, there were hardly any services. So I ended up being the one kid in the entire school that had hearing loss. The only kid in the entire school that had hearing aids. Didn't even wear an FM system for a while. Didn't have speech pathology services, but I did have, you know, an IQ test or something like that, like every other kid would have. Those routine screenings, if you will. And my favorite story about 3rd grade was, this is how oblivious I was to things. I remember we were learning about water, evaporation, condensation. And every student in that class got a little cup, filled it up with water, and we would line it up next to the window. And then we would wait. And one day, the teacher goes, "Oh, everybody come look." So we run over to the window and we find out that my cup evaporated first. "Sam, you just won a prize." I'm like, I didn't know there was a competition going on. Well, I won a watercolor paint set. It was just kind of bizarre because when all this was happening, I didn't actually go with the group. I was still at my desk, completely oblivious to what was going on. Didn't know there was a competition going on, and so I can imagine that I missed a lot of things. We were only there for a year and a half and then ended up having to go to England. I was on a U.S. military base, and there were American teachers there. There was an audiologist. There was a speech pathologist, so that stuff came back again. I got the FM system back. Was in the mainstream setting. I wasn't the only kid in the school with hearing loss, but one of very few. I do remember some discussions that my father had with the school system. They were convinced that maybe I should be in special ed, and they said, "No, not special ed. Sam's doing just fine. He just needs a way to hear and to learn, and so we just need to keep an FM system on him." So that part worked out okay. So in interacting with these new kids that have hearing loss, my next favorite story would be, so the kid next to me had, okay, so the teacher's actually wearing 2 different microphones instead of 1. And I don't know what the limitations were then, so the teacher would have 2. Anyway, the teacher had his microphone on, and my microphone wasn't on, and she had to go to the restroom, and she forgot to turn it off, and he's sitting there, like, wondering what the heck is going on. So, we certainly have those days. There are benefits to technology, and there are not so good benefits to technology. So, So yeah, that was like 4th and 5th grade. I don't remember a lot about having any academic difficulties, but realized in the beginning I did experience a significant drop in hearing, and then it kind of stayed stable for a while, and then just slowly started getting worse and worse and worse. When I was about to enter the 6th grade, prior to that, in England, my dad, my stepmother were having marital problems, and so my stepmother decided to take her 2 sons with her and go back to Colorado. That's where most of her family was, leaving me and my dad. And around that time, there was a war with Libya. I don't know if some of you remember some of that, but I remember my dad coming home with the full guard and the mask and all that stuff. Not really a good place for, you know, a 4th grader to be coming home, and there's no parent at home until my dad got home. So I had to fend for myself, make dinner for myself until he got home. So I said, Dad, I think I want to go and live with my stepmom and my 2 brothers, not realizing that they were having marital problems. You know, I just thought maybe she didn't like England and wanted to go back and be with family. So he said, that's fine. We'll at least have you go and see your grandparents in Maryland before you do that. So I get to Maryland. I spend all summer long with my grandparents, and my understanding for a while was that I had so much fun in my grandparents' house that I wanted to stay with them until my father came back from the States, from England. And it wasn't until maybe 4 or 5 months ago when I last saw my granddad to tell me what exactly happened. And he said, oh. He said, what really happened was you were supposed to go with your stepmother, who's also from Thailand. I don't think I mentioned that point, but my mom and stepmom are both from Thailand. Neither one have high school education. But anyway, so my grandparents are like, so you want to go live with your stepmother, who doesn't have a high school education, doesn't speak English very well. I don't think that's a good thing. So they talked with my father, and they agreed that maybe I should stay with